No, it was fantastic. It was absolutely amazing to get to know her as quickly as I did.
Prince Harry's world, once again, arrives at the precipice of a collapse following his recent discovery about Meghan's Soho House escapades. And it's so much worse than he first feared. The Sussexes have learned to live their lives free from the burden of the crown, creating their own happiness far away from the bright lights of the English court. However, the illusion of their joy comes under potential threat from Harry's recent discovery. What did Harry find? Could this kompromat tear the Sussexes apart? Join us as we watch Prince Harry uncover Meghan's shady Soho House past, Harry's sacrifice, and the Soho House blemish. Leaving the United Kingdom as a Windsor prince was never a reality that Harry or anyone else could have guessed. Literally, he chose to give up his birthright for that one woman whom he loved, Meghan Markle. Before moving, Harry had tried to weather the storm in the British royal court, hoping that he could at least get his family on his side and have them see exactly what he saw in the woman he chose to call home and build a bright future with. However, for some reason, versions of which he detailed in his tell-all memoir, Spare, it just did not work out. However, as much as he could not bring himself to separate from the home and family that he had always known, the time had come for him to choose a new path, and he did choose. The Sussexes moved together to the United States in 2020. At first, the times were unfair to their highnesses as they struggled to settle into an unfamiliar setting.
I can say safely so from my experience and all the travelling that I've done.
Especially Prince Harry and their children. However, Meghan, who had lived all of her life in the United States, where she started her career on television before finally finding fame with the hit series Suits, was the first to figure it out. In the hit series, she played Rachel Zane, a hotshot assistant with a flair for the dramatic, including bargaining her way to working in a law firm that generally didn't accept her standard of education. But was that just Hollywood writing, or is that just who she really is? This question has seldom weighed that heavily on Harry's mind, but choosing to fight the fires of the English court together, and choosing to leave it all behind, while they journey into the shiny sun of freedom together, was just about enough to keep the Spare unsuspecting.
To do some form of therapy, or at least be able to talk more about.
Following their move into the United States, they lived in one of Tyler Perry's mansions at Beverly Ridge Estates, where they planned their next move before acquiring that property in Montecito, California, which has become home to the Sussexes since July 2020. While they had lived in the country for 5 years, releasing the popular Spare memoir, and Meghan Markle getting her own television show, and other streaming channels, it seemed that the Sussexes had finally found peace, and their days of silent struggles had finally lost the wind in their sails. But there was something else lurking, threatening to unravel a house that seemed to have found unity. Whispers in Harry's ears in the streets of Hollywood had grown louder, especially with Soho House getting repeated to him over and over again. Hence, feigning ignorance was not going to be an option forever. He needed to take a step to quell the storm in his heart, so he set out on a voyage to discovery, prying through his wife's computer, scouring and stalking her social media, and just hoping to find something. But just how did that work out for him? The prince at the crossroads. Harry's heart was sinking, and he needed a way out. 2 cold exits presented themselves, offering an option to ease his burdened heart and escape this personal hell. He could simply close his ears to the shapeless but choking winds of whispers serenading Hollywood about his wife, or find evidence that proved his wife's innocence. As expected, doubts burdened his sinking heart, and he had no answers. Was he the sacrificed prince? Did Meghan really facilitate their decision to come all the way back to a familiar playground of hers? He had no answers, but the exits remained open. Ignore the noise, or dig, and see how far down the rabbit hole he could go. As a man who had experienced loss and a broken home, Harry understood what he had to lose if he made a discovery that he could not handle.
It happened a few weeks ago, earlier this month, here at our cottage.
He was between a rock and a hard place. In his case, whatever he chose to do was never going to be an easy choice, but avoid it, dread it, or run from it. Destiny arrives anyway. He had lived his life with this mantra ever since he lost his mother at the tender age of 12. He had been in a duel with fate before, and he knew he could not win. But was he going to let fate happen to him, or simply hunt it down and claim it in his own time? For Harry, it was scorched earth time, and he decided to chase the high of being right and be done with fate's little games once and for all. Sources in their Montecito mansion claimed that the spare has stolen glances at his wife.
No, it was fantastic. It was absolutely amazing to get to know her as quickly as I did.
In their Montecito home, watching her like a hawk and hoping to see something, just anything at all, to set him on the right path. But Meghan has been smart. She appeared squeaky clean. For some people, that might have been enough to close their eyes and ears to heavy whispers of Hollywood, but for Harry, being that clean aroused his suspicion even further, piquing his interest, and finally giving him that gentle nudge that he needed to play detective. What's the worst that could happen anyway? He had seen it all, played the Game of Thrones at a young age, watched conspiracies unfold over his mother's demise, answered questions at an inquest that simply died a natural death as they kept hitting a dead end. He knew that he could handle whatever else came his way, but could this heart, that had been broken into a million shards of ugly pieces, handle the truth, if he ever found it? Harry makes a discovery. While the prince remained stuck in his mind, fumbling around the crossroads of the hardest decisions that he had ever had to make in his whole life, Meghan Markle dazzled in the media, posting regular Instagram pictures and Snapchat reels for everyone to see. Her face was reflective of a woman who had found a new path and devised a strategy to move on with life. But this time, she was going to be in charge of her own destiny, her career, and her family. Gone were the days of dancing to the tune of a tone-deaf crown, who allegedly could not stand her sight, nor her potentially dark-skinned baby, a 20th century melanin problem in one of the most reputable families in the world. Who would have guessed, however, her Prince Charming, who was once completely sold on the idea of moving to the United States for their family's protection, had been given an earful by Hollywood faithfuls, including directors and old friends of Meghan's, with whom she used to share her deepest, darkest secrets. Suddenly, the ghosts of her past were back to haunt her. However, sources close to their Montecito home and the family believed that Meghan had cleaned her tracks before nudging her husband back home.
There was no better place to share this than on World Mental Health Day with Project Healthy Minds.
But was that enough to stop Harry from figuring it all out? Harry knew too well the matters of the heart, and he was certain that a chance at the truth, no matter how painful, was his only desire. So, he scorched the earth in search of evidence, just anything at all to quiet the voices in his head and finally find peace. Sources at their Montecito home described his avid search as relentless. He waited every time for her to be away from home so he could get a chance at her computer. They had a home computer, but surely that's not where the bodies are buried, or at least so he thought. Hence, he played his game smarter, looking through her personal files, emails, scrolling through her gallery, prying for information, hoping for the best, yet expecting the worst.
Women all over America are fighting greasy pots and pans.
To his surprise and relief, he found nothing. In fact, if he died at the time, a huge smile was going to be on his face. For the first time, he had dived into the rabbit hole and came out unscathed. Although he seemed to have finally found closure, the rumors did not end. This time, they came with names and a place. The name Marcus Anderson kept flying around, and Soho House was consistently being whispered in his ears. There were no real leads. So, he let it go, until he had a reason to look into his home computer at Montecito, and what he found will knock you off your feet. What exactly did he find out about Meghan Markle and Soho House? Harry's first clue. Since the whispers would not go away, the redhead prince decided to play Sherlock Holmes, and this time he was not leaving any stones unturned. Once again, Harry pondered at home, with his heart dying and rotting in silence. Although he kept the stench away from his wife, the Montecito mansion was doused in his doubt, and it stuck closely to his family. The cold weight of his grieving heart was starting to seep into the cracks of his eyes. While his actions hid his pains, his eyes told stories of a bleeding heart, tattered tales of fear, a fear of loss. Yet Meghan had no clue what Harry was up to. But clarity soon called. heavy in its approach like the boots of the guards changing at noon in Buckingham Palace. For a while, he had found his much-needed spark again and was ready for another journey down the rabbit hole. But at the time, he had made himself a promise to never let go until he found something. His strategy was different. He had looked in places where he thought he might have found a clue, but now he is looking elsewhere, prying into places that no one would ever dream of searching. Secrets are meant to be hidden anyway, far away from anyone's reach. But in some cases, the best secret keepers hide them in plain sight. And for the first time, he dared to look in the last place that he had overlooked, the home computer, which they both shared. He hurriedly looked through the emails, spam, and even the electronic bills, but he found nothing. At that point, failure had become a recurring motif with him, leaving him to settle on one of two decisions. Meghan was either too smart, or he was just being paranoid and getting thrashed around by a Hollywood landscape that he knew nothing about. Sources report that he sat by the computer, looking lost into the computer like a man trying to evaluate his state of mind. But just as he was about to move, his eyes caught something, a memory that he had rarely had the time to think about. They were folders containing pictures of their wedding. He saw their smiles, the atmosphere, his grandmother, and smiles on familiar faces, with whom he thought he was going to share a connection forever.
To do some form of therapy, or at least be able to talk more about.
While he scrolled, his eyes darted downwards, where he found a zipped folder named S. He didn't put that there, at least that much he knew. He was not certain what it could be, and yet again, he is faced with the same old choices. Let it go, or take a deep dive, and where you sink or swim. He chose the latter, extracting files, which the computer processed for over 2 minutes. What could she have possibly hidden so carefully in plain sight? An oxymoron of notions baffling his confused heart. Prince Harry finds the bodies. At the first sighting of the images, he was nigh disappointed at what he had found. For the first time, he was disappointed in his quest for answers. They were simply pictures of his wife in bikinis and on a yacht. Some of these pictures seemed rather old, but he found one from 2024 around the same time when they spent the most time together in England. While he had not thought much of it at the time, he found something right beside her, a bag with the Soho House initials on it. She was actually in Soho House, but surprisingly, he does not remember being informed about it. He scrolled lower and soon found more pictures of her at Soho. But this time, she was much younger. Although she had never hidden her visits to Soho House in the past, as it is, and has always been a place for the elites to chill, and the nigh-elites to feel seen by everyone else. Finding the pictures in hiding just seemed to sort of send the wrong message. To Harry, seeing a picture was not the problem. However, the intentions behind the pictures seemed rather difficult for him to get behind. She had never shown them to him, and they were zipped in a file and sandwiched somewhere between their wedding pictures, in a place where he would seldom look. To him, this was evidence like a low-hanging fruit, and all he needed to do was pluck. While he was willing to look away from the pictures and simply let them go, the whispers about Meghan, which set him off playing detective in the first place, had more to do with her connection to Hollywood and how she worked her way up from the top of the food chain, from being an ordinary briefcase model on the Deal or No Deal show to playing Rachel Zane on Suits. Harry has witnessed actors rise and fall and seen firsthand how the media could play a part in a person getting a role in movies. But then, there were the other sides of the story, where beautiful actresses allegedly often offered more than talent for opportunity. The world of Hollywood is absolutely cutthroat, where the strong go to survive and the weak go to die. In that moment, when Harry's thoughts ran wild, he felt the ground opening up and swallowing him whole. He was a part of the Hollywood scene now, so he knew that every woman who climbed really quickly to the top of the Hollywood pyramid was a subject of gossip between the top dogs in the industry, most of whom he had met through his wife. The discussion was the same at all times. These whispers came with a name, a price, and more importantly, a place. And Soho House was that place, where debauchery allegedly was silently paraded among men of class, who had women from all the top industries flocking around them, offering their bodies at the price of a glistening Hollywood career. But just how does Harry react to the news? A conflicted prince. Prince Harry's mind has always been a minefield of malapropisms, with his emotions misfiring and his thoughts exploding in all the wrong directions. Yet again, his feelings are all over the place, and he remains unsure what these pictures could mean. He could make guesses, lose himself in the rumors, and decide to end his marriage, take it all low-key, until he finds out the truth behind the pictures, or simply put it in the past. But his mind ran too wild, and his rationale was pretty basic, yet seemed plausible. Once, he lived in a country where he had it all: unlimited funds, huge security detail provided by some of King's finest, a stakehold in the United Kingdom, and a position that gave him access to doors everywhere. But here he was in the United States, a playground that only his wife could really navigate, and for the first time, he felt like just another pawn in someone else's game. He was no longer the top dog everyone expected a Windsor to be. It was almost like she had it all figured out and did not even need his input. He was sitting on his memoir at the time, and all it needed was a little push to get it around the globe. Who wouldn't want a first-hand scoop of the inside workings of Buckingham Palace? And yet again, Meghan was the center of it all, pushing all the right buttons, setting up serious PR, and getting the book out in the open market to survive. He tried to push the thoughts away, but they came at him like a tidal wave, and he just couldn't help but question himself. Is it possible that Meghan had been planning to leave the United Kingdom for the United States before they both decided to leave? Is there a chance that his brother, Prince Harry, who had always considered Meghan as a femme fatale, was right all along? The question continued to scowl at him, and for the first time in his life since his mother died, he felt like he might have been handed an illusion of control over his destiny, when in fact he was being played like a fiddle. And now, with the carefully hidden pictures, which were stashed in plain sight, giving her plausible deniability even if he dared to ask, he was certain something was not adding up. Although he had made no conclusions, the hurt in his heart ran deep because of their connection to Soho House. Why was he so connected to this global private members club? Harry, Meghan, and Soho House. Before the dim, flickering lights of Montecito mansions, before Harry was named the rebellious Windsor, before he wrote his daunting tell-all memoir, there was an evening that Harry would never forget. An evening that created his best memories, memories he cannot let go of, and that evening was in Soho House, where he was meeting Violet von Westenholz, the director of public relations for Ralph Lauren at the time. For years, Harry, at every interview, every speech, described meeting Meghan for the first time as the day that he knew he was marrying her. It was love at first sight for both, and they had their first ever date in 2016 at the Soho House on Dean Street, London. As far as first impressions go, Harry was not at his best. He was late, but promised not to make it a habit. Hence, Soho House is more than just a private member club to Harry. It's the first place where he ever felt seen by someone else. Although he had been with Chelsea Davies and Cressida Bones, he never connected as he did with Meghan Markle. He was late to their first date, and she immediately let him have it. She spoke to him, not as some lion cub, huge prince from the most coveted throne in Europe, but as another man, who, for some reason, cannot help their innate tardiness, and does not have the decency of not showing it on the very first date. Harry wasn't offended. He enjoyed the company of Meghan right there at Soho House, where sparks were flying all night, and they were already planning the second date. So, for Harry, it's not just about Soho House. It's about it being the altar, where, for the first time, he felt what it meant to be loved and be completely seen by a woman who is not blinded by his status. This connection to the club ran his mind ragged, while he stared at the pictures from the extracted files. He could not help but imagine if it were ever true that his wife used to be at Soho House in the past, courting favors for roles. There were too many things at stake. For some context, he had just been on a date with Meghan Markle at Soho House, New York City, and they were accompanied by British singer Ed Sheeran on October 12, 2025. However, it wasn't just them. The Sussexes had just dined with lawn tennis legend Serena Williams at the hotspot. His mind was ravaged at the thought of what the media could do with the information that sat so easily on his lap and hidden in plain sight by his wife. Now, he had something in the semblance of proof that might validate some of the rumors that he had heard, but it was not enough to force a confession out of Meghan. And now he was, once again, faced with two choices. He could keep the zip file and delete the extracted photos, pretending to see them, or pick one of the pictures and investigate further. The thoughts weighed heavily on his mind, and he wanted a way out too badly, but he was too far gone. What did he decide to do? The choice at Montecito. Harry was still in Montecito with his head dropped into the computer screen, looking at each of these photographs with disgust, contempt, and uncertainty. His heart pounded like a dream, with heavy beats of sadness that only he could hear, humming at a sad frequency inside of him. He vibrated with disgust, and many thoughts kept him mute, kept his eyes open, but almost shut down his mind. And for the first time in a long time, sources at Montecito could confirm that the prince was divided within himself, cautiously looking for answers to questions about the Hollywood whispers that threatened to drive him insane. However, while he stared at the pictures, inside sources claimed that he saw images of her closely knit circles at Soho House, including her rich friends, and then one very familiar face and name, a name that he had heard among his new Hollywood friends and frenemies, Marcus Anderson. He knew Marcus. Marcus was that guy at Soho House. If you needed a membership card or just found your way around the inner workings of Soho House, he was the man. Marcus works at Soho as the membership director of the organization. Hence, everyone tried to get familiar with him. However, while he found his way around Soho and helped other people settle in, he had also been allegedly described as some sort of social climber and good broker when it came to meeting people. He was the guy who made the introductions and had everyone on the same social plane. But Harry knew him even better than that. For some context, he, together with Misha Nonu, planned the first blind date between Meghan and Harry in 2016. However, it was not the first time that he had met Meghan. Harry believed that he had always been a huge part of her circle, pushing her forward and helping her forge on with her career. But Marcus's reputation among people in Hollywood, whom he had somewhat helped made introductions, made it quite difficult for Harry to believe that it had never at one point happened that Marcus decided to help Meghan facilitate her career in the old days and chose to pimp her to some hotshot director. Although the spare had made no conclusions, he lived in fear of the unknown and had to make a choice. His thoughts ran wilder than a forest fire, but decisions needed to be made. Whether he stops and thinks for himself and finally confronts Meghan with these alleged findings and inferences, only time will tell. Do you think Meghan Markle has hidden secrets at Soho House she would rather Harry never knew? Is it possible Harry's imagination is just the ramblings of a man who has been hurt a lot by fate's little games? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.